Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Amon Green, Gourmet Packers all-time leading rusher, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packer content. Go Pack, go!
What's up, guys? Welcome into Good Morning Lambeau. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. Email us, PackersTotalAccess@gmail.com. You can text us 865-658-5824. Join alongside Tim in Green Bay, where they're expecting, about 3 to 5 inches of snow tomorrow there. So you guys are getting ready for another storm, look like. But I'll tell you, man, it feels like a bright, sunny summer day today now that our boy Sterling Sharpe is officially in the Hall of Fame, man. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing great. Welcome, Sterling. Welcome.
Got it just in time, Tim.
Yeah, it feels like hell froze over up here, too. I mean, it's pretty cold up here. So, hey, it's about time they got him in. So happy. I couldn't even fall asleep last night. I was so happy and excited watching that. Congrats. Well-deserved, well-earned. I think it's been a long time coming, and a lot of fans are finally feeling that sense of relief. A wrong has been righted in the football world for sure.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it was a blast watching everybody react to it last night because it's obviously a great moment for Sterling and Shannon, and you guys know, anybody who's seen Shannon's induction speech was all about trying to get Sterling in as well, and the fact that he just multiple times has said that Sterling was the best football player in their house. Right. And the fact that he wasn't in the Hall of Fame was obviously very, just a weird situation it's got to be when man, this dude was way better than me and I'm in the Hall and they won't let him in just because injuries kind of hampered him, Yeah. So glad it finally got done. But the best part of last night was watching all of Packers Nation just react to it. Because, as much as this is, like I said, a great moment for the Sharpe family, and if you guys don't know anything about their upbringing, they grew up a rough childhood and kind of leaned on each other the whole way. And great moment for the Sharpe family, but, and Packer fans, it was just like, this was a big victory for us, because all of us have been, I don't know one Packer fan that's like, I don't think Sterling belongs in the Hall of Fame. Not one. I haven't met one that felt that way. So this is something they've been pounding the table for quite some time. And it's just, it's cool, man. Football is about winning Lombardis. Obviously, it's about winning championships. That's the ultimate goal. But it's awesome that even in the offseason, you can have these little victories like this that kind of brings the fan base together. I felt like we needed that over the last few days after we had podcasters arguing with former players and fans going back and forth on different topics. So this was just a cool unifying experience, I think, man.
I totally agree. And you're right. I mean, the Hall of Fame is, it's the greatest individual accomplishment you can probably get for your playing career. But, you don't get there without your team and your teammates and your fans and, the voters, hey, Eli Manning got snubbed on his first year of eligibility. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people thought that Eli and Peyton would be the first brothers in the Hall of Fame together. But it's Shannon and Sterling, and I'm just excited and happy, and it's amazing to think that he's finally here. It almost feels surreal that he's finally in, and I think a lot of us would agree that it'd be a no-doubter. He might have been a first ballot Hall of Famer if he had played 10 or 11 or 12 seasons like a lot of other guys. So for him to stand out in that era, you had Jerry Rice, you had a lot of great receivers in the late 80s, early 90s, and Sterling Sharpe certainly deserves it. So I'm glad he's in, man.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. It was just, like I said, a great feel-good moment for all of Packers Nation, for sure. 2-0 for this. Sterling's reaction was amazing. It meant more to him than most. Yeah, I wish we could play the video, but if you guys will go to my Twitter page, you'll see it. I think Jordan Schultz might have grabbed it off an Instagram story, but it shows how Sterling Sharpe was given the information, and he was upstairs at his house, right? And his brother Shannon showed up, snuck in the house, and he's standing at the bottom of the steps in his gold jacket. And to see the way Sterling reacts was like, oh man, it's like it was still surreal, right? At first he's like, is this what and then you can kind of see he steps back for a second, thinks maybe not, and then it hits him. It's just absolutely awesome. So again, I wish we could share it, but we don't want to get hit with any kind of any kind of copyright or anything like that. I'm sure some knucklehead's already ripped it, put it on his YouTube channel, and he'll flag me as if he's the owner if we show it. So we got to be careful with that stuff. But yeah, there you go. All right. Some other news too, just kind of around football in general. I wanted to hit on this. We talked about how Dion brought in Warren Sapp. Coach Prime brought in Warren Sapp to the Colorado football team. Well, he's adding another Hall of Famer here. Adam Schefter reported Colorado now has hired Pro Football Hall of Fame running back Marshall Faulk as its new running back. I'm telling you, man, Dion is building a bully over there, and people still roll their eyes about it. And here's the reality. When Dion came in, the year before Dion showed up to Colorado, the team was 1-11, right? His first year, they went 4-8. So they literally tripled their win total, right? Really quadrupled, I guess you could say. And then last year, they jumped all the way to 9-4. At one point, they were ranked 16th in the entire nation. They went from a one-win team to the 16th in the country, right? And their college football playoff high ranking was 16. And at the end of the year, they finished 23rd in the college football playoff ranking. So this is something that's only going to do – it's going to do two things, Tim. You're going to get a guy who can coach up these running backs in Colorado and turn them into just awesome football players, but also the recruiting aspect. You know how easy it's going to be to recruit players when Marshall Faulk comes in your living room and says, hey, how would you like to come play running back for me? I think this stuff's awesome because it's cool to see since the NIL era has started. It seems like there's more former players jumping into coaching, and I was really excited when NIL broke loose in college football like this. I felt like it was going to be college football is going to truly feel like the minor leagues of the NFL now. And that's what it kind of feels like to me. But what do you think about Marshall Faulk going over there? Dion, man, he's doing it upright, no doubt.
For sure. And I mean, you talk about that. We all have that list of like our favorite players that weren't necessarily, Packers, right? And man, Marshall Faulk is on my list, dude. That guy was so fun to watch. You talk about all-time great player, one of the best running backs I think the game's seen, arguably ever, but certainly in the last 50 years. Just a fun player to watch, and it's going to be fun to watch him grow as a coach and really see how he coaches up those backs down there in Colorado. So I think you're right, man. NIL has kind of changed the landscape, and it's making these jobs a little bit more enticing for these former players. And even if they don't have aspirations of coaching in the NFL or being a coordinator one day, some guys do prefer that route of just developing the youth and the young talent. So it'll be fun to watch Marshall Faulk at Colorado, man. I think that's a great hire.
And, Marshall Faulk, his career lasted well into my adulthood, but some of these names that are being mentioned now, like just even in the chat here, like Ben Holden talking about the only player who was better than Sterling Sharpe during his time is Jerry Rice. Like, these are all the players that were playing when I was a kid. Yep. And it's just so cool to see their names kind of coming back up now, right? Whether it's the Hall of Fame or like Marshall Faulk, obviously, came on a little bit later there, really dominated in the early 2000s with the Colts and then the Rams. It's neat to see these guys still around the game, if that makes sense. 2-0 for this says Colorado is going to be the 2000s all-decade team, no doubt. No doubt. That's a really good description. Drew D says there was a real shot Sterling Sharpe could have never gotten in. He was a good media commentator as well. That's the thing, too, man. I personally like it when former players are announcers. I don't know how you feel, Tim. I know Tom Brady got raked over the coals this year, just like Tony Romo gets raked over the coals, just like Troy Aikman gets raked over the coals. I always roll my eyes at that stuff. Everybody has bad moments. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're perfect, but if you remove the bias of hating a player, right, and then you also remove the bias of, hey, listen, if your team's losing and they're talking about your team losing, you're going to say, oh, I hate these announcers. They're so biased toward the other team. They're going to play to which direction the game goes in, but I would love to see every announcer be a former player, me personally. I'm not one of these dudes that's like, no, these are the media's job. They need to stay out of it. I want to know from a player's perspective, what are you seeing on the field right now? But I guess everybody watches the game a little different,
Yeah, I mean, that would be the whole point of bringing in a former player, right? You want that expertise. You want someone that played the game, that was in between the lines and understands it. And, yeah, I mean, they're not going to be our favorites all the time, but it's the information and the analysis that you really want, Say what you want about Tony Romo, man. The guy knows football, It is what it is. Same thing with Tom Brady. I don't think and there's a lot of people that, love Tom Brady, and there's a lot of people that hate Tom Brady, and that's just going to be what it is. But it doesn't change the fact that Dude's one of the all-time greats, and is going to give you some football knowledge if you can get past your bias and just listen to him. So no, I think it's cool, and that's a great point too. That I almost forgot about that, his broadcast days. Just another thing to add to Sterling's repertoire there, for sure. But I would agree with the comment that if you're talking about wide receiver in the '90s, man, it's Jerry Rice and Sterling Sharpe. Better be the first two names out of your mouth for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. And again, for the players that were actually inducted or being inducted into the Hall of Fame, let me get that full list for you guys. I know Holmes MD once says Calvin Johnson was pretty good, absolutely. Josh Martin, I like Brady as a commentator. I do too. I think me and Josh Martin are the only two people on the face of the earth that does like him. But yeah, I think he does a good job. He's gonna get more comfortable as he goes along. I really do. So here are the players that were inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2025. Jared Allen, edge defender, you could call him defensive lineman in general. I think he might have lined up inside a couple of times. Jared Allen from the Minnesota Vikings, he was just an absolute thorn in our ass for so many years as Green Bay Packer fans. Then, of course, Sterling Sharpe from the Green Bay Packers finally gets in. Eric Allen, I think he was a running back, right? Am I thinking right? Eric Allen was a running back, or was he a DB?
I think he was a running back.
Was he a running back?
I believe
and then, of course, so. Antonio Gates from the Chargers. The
greatest tight end of all time.
Seriously.
Antonio Gates.
Some people roll their eyes Antonio. No, Antonio Gates was dominant. He was dominant, man. It's a shame that he never won a ring, Tim. But yeah, Antonio Gates is one of those dudes, a basketball player, if I remember correctly. They kind of tried to convert to a football player, and obviously he took off.
You can ask any of your favorite tight ends right now who their favorite tight end was. Most of them are going to tell you Antonio Gates. Mm-hmm. we don't have Gronkowski and Travis Kelce and these guys without Antonio Gates, man. He was just an absolute monster out there.
He was, and you think at the time, too, of the players that were in that same locker room, like you had LaDainian Tomlinson, right? He was Hall of Famer, obviously. Yep. Antonio Gates was in there. I think it was at the time, I want to say Drew Brees was there for a little bit of LaDainian Tomlinson's time, but I could be wrong. But they went to Phillip Rivers over Drew Brees real quick. And Phillip Rivers, some say, he could be a Hall of Famer. Maybe he's not. I don't really care either way enough. That probably tells me he isn't a Hall of Famer, to be honest with you. But you had that awesome roster, and they could just never get over the hump, which is, again, it's further confirmation, man, how tough it is to win a championship in this league, man. It really
Absolutely.
is. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. All right, let's see if we got anything else in here. J. Cole said, I'll definitely take Gronk and Gates over Kelce, no doubt about it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Kelce is the choice route master. Yeah. He's that dude's going to run out there and go, and his quarterback's just going to stare at him the whole time. He's going to go, what are you doing? Okay, you're doing it. I'm just going to sit down right here. Right.
I'll take Gronk, Gates, and Tony Gonzalez over Kelce.
Gronk was, to me, in my opinion, Gronk is the greatest tight end ever play the game.
He certainly might be the most complete tight end to play the game.
You could line him up in line, true Y, and he would put a all-pro defensive end on their ass. And then you could flex him out in the X, and he could burn a cornerback D. It was just wild what he could do. It was so wild, especially in his prime. Now, those latter years, the shoulders all banged up and everything, got the huge brace. He's kind of limping it along. And here's what you got to really take into consideration since it's draft time too, Tim. This is important fact. Gronk was a fullback at Arizona, okay? So I know I'm as guilty as anyone. When we talk about changing positions from college to pro, you kind of roll your eyes. Yeah, okay, that's great. He also had a significant back injury, if I remember correctly, which steered a lot of people off of Gronk. And, of course, Belichick pulled the trigger on it and got several rings because of it. I don't think they win as many championships without Gronkowski, for sure. So,
I would agree.
Yeah.
And one more on Antonio Gates. You remember that game in 2014 against the Seattle, right? I mean, that's the memory that sticks out to me with him. I mean, you're playing against the Legion of Boom. You got, basically the best defense in the league. It was very difficult, points for a premium, and Gates had like 3 touchdowns, and it was just, he looked dominant against, the best front to back defense at the time. It was just, it was awesome. So if you guys get a chance, go look up the 2014 Chargers Seahawks game. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, 2-0 for this says Kraft will be in this conversation. I hope you're right. 2-0 for this. I hope you're right. And I think you are. I think with what he's shown early, to me he's like between very good and Hall of Fame. He could be anywhere in between. I think his floor is very good, and I think based off what he's shown us so far, he has the potential. Now everything's got to come together, right? You got to avoid injury. That's a big thing with tight end. Hell, Sterling Sharpe, look how long it took him to get in just because of an injury, and he played wide receiver. So for me with Tucker Kraft, it's like the floor is very good. The ceiling is, top 5 tight end of all time. And I know people will hear that and they'll laugh. But what we've seen, what he's done with his opportunities. Now, I don't think he's quite the Rob Gronkowski build. Like he's not that big of a threat deep, in my opinion, right now. He just hasn't proven it. But you've also got to take into consideration how we've utilized him. We love using him on the leak. We love using him on the shallow crosses and letting him get some space in between him and the defender, clearing things out, hit him on the shallow cross or the spot route, whatever it might be. But yeah, I think Tucker Kraft, man, I am very, very excited about Tucker Kraft moving forward.
Me too, especially if we talk about bringing in one of these veteran receivers to the room, and you start tilting coverage a little bit, and then Matt's able to use, Tucker in different ways than we have in the past couple of years. And maybe we'll get to see some of those shot plays, Yep.
Drew D says Antonio Gates was undrafted. That's correct. And he also, this is what we were just talking about, Drew. Apparently Antonio Gates was a basketball player at Kent State, not a football player. I had no clue. They were talking about at that time. You got to take into effect too that the NFL was going to a spread look. This is when McCarthy came to Green Bay, right? All the rage was let's spread everything. It's West Coast spread was the call, right? That was not the call, but the system, if you will. And even with Marty Schottenheimer out there in San Diego at the time with the Chargers, he wasn't pressing into it as much, but they were starting to bleed into everything all the way across the board. So, yeah, what basically started happening, I remember listening to Draft Talk and on the old Sirius NFL radio, it was teams are looking for basketball players. They're looking for basketball. They're looking for rebounders, someone who could crash the boards, right? Antonio Gates was one of those dudes. So, yeah, former basketball player for sure. Really, really cool seeing that. Drew D says, no wonder everybody says LeBron James could be a star tight end. That was a big talking point when he decided to go to the NBA because they were talking about he could have been even a wide receiver, some were saying. Could you imagine? Listen, I despise LeBron James. That's just me personally. I don't like the way he plays the game. I don't like the flop. And to me, it's the same reason that I've come to despise Patrick Mahomes. It sucks too because he's one of the all-time greats. But that whole flailing the arms around and being dramatic, trying to get calls, I just can't. I'm not wired that way. I can't root for that. I can't support that. But the thought of LeBron James playing wide receiver or tight end, Tim, God, I just don't know if he can handle how physical the NFL is, the way it flops around. You don't see tight ends flopping. You know what I mean? You don't see those guys doing it. It's usually just Patrick Mahomes. That's all I can think of, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Brown would have fit in well in that Kansas City offense, hey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's see. Judah Tom says Gates would have been Hall of Fame in the NBA as well. Safe to say. That's pretty wild to think about, right? I mean, you look at him, think of him on the basketball court. Look at that dude's arms right there.
Yeah.
Just dominating people. So anyway, that's your 2025 Hall of Fame class. I'm excited to hear their speeches. That's one of my favorite things to do is I usually have to record it because of the show now, but I love going back and just listening to the stories they tell and everything. Jerry Kramer, one of my favorite all-time Hall of Fame speeches. When he told the story about how bad their team was and they played the Baltimore Colts, and he said every time they scored a touchdown, the horse would do a lap around the field to fire the crowd up. Yeah. And he said, we lost 55-14 or whatever. He said, we damn near killed the horse that night. I love those old stories, man. They're the best. But, all right, so there's the Hall of Fame class. I got a video here I want to share with you guys. This is from our good friend, Coach Chris Haddad, over at Victory Sports. You'll hear us promote and talk about them a lot. He recently did an interview, and I love how he did this too. I can't find the interview in its entirety. I'm sure it's somewhere on YouTube. But he broke this down into a lot of segments, a lot of clips that are just absolutely awesome. And this is Coach Alex Mirabal. If you guys don't know who that is, he's the offensive line coach for the Miami Hurricanes. And what he's talking about here is building trust, okay? And we always look at the PFF grades, right? We look at where are they at on our draft board. We look at the system they're going into and the schematic aspect and the X's and O's. And it's so hard for us as fans to truly understand the coaching element in which you're trying to get a player to buy into exactly what you're doing, right? I think it's something that's so underrated, and it's why some teams can have all the talent in the world, like we talked about with the Chargers, right? Why didn't they win the big one? Probably a handful of knuckleheads in that locker room that didn't fully buy into what the team was doing. And that's all it takes is one or two, as my old coach used to say, one or two turds to ruin the whole bunch, right? But love what Coach Alex Mirabal says about building trust here. Again, this is over at Victory Sports. Shout out to Chris Haddad for just bringing this awesome content. Let's see what Coach has to say here.
Coach, there's one quote I love by you. It's, I need to trust that you know what to do, why to do, and how to do it. Not the kind of trust I can trust on my wallet and keys. How do you develop trust, especially in this, from an offensive line standpoint, especially with this transfer portal kind of crazy world that we're living in where guys are coming and going? How do you develop trust within that offensive line?
Yeah. So every day, right? So right now it's January, so I'm on the road recruiting, but it's the job of our O-line GA, it's the job of our O-line analyst, and it's the job of our older guys to help the new guys learn what are we doing, why are we doing it, and how we're doing it, right? What, why, and how of the Miami Hurricanes offensive system, right? So now when I get off the road in February, now I interject myself into it, right? In terms of like, hey, let's go over duo. Hey, let's go over tight zone, right? And so, so I tell them this all the time. I told this to the four guys that.
If people are wondering what tight zone is, you'll hear us say wide zone and inside zone. Tight zone is inside zone. That's all it is. We'll talk about it a little bit here in a minute.
Just shut up. I said, listen, forget about starting. You're not starting. Okay. You're not even competing right now because you don't know what we're doing. You don't know why we're doing it, and you don't know how we're doing it. Right. So forget about that stuff. Get that out of the way. And typically they're like, okay, good, coach. And now let's just learn what we're doing, right? Let's just learn, how do we call duo? How do we call tight zone? How do we call our 5-man protection? How do we call our 6-man protection, right? Because right now you guys have no idea, right? You might call, like literally there's a one kid, hey, how'd you guys call counter to the right? He goes, well, coach, in the huddle, we just said counter right. Okay, cool. That's not how we do it at Miami. Yeah. This is what it's called at Miami, right? So you got to teach them that, right? You got to teach them what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing it. So when I say trust, that's the most important thing, is that can I trust them? Can the rest of the guys in the room trust them that when they get put on the field, they're going to know what to do, why to do it, and how to do it, and they're going to be able to do it fast, right? And like when I ask them questions, Chris, you don't want to like you can't stumble upon it. You can't, right? It's got to come out fast and clear, right? And I'm not talking about speech impediments, stuff, none of that. I'm not talking about that because I'm very sensitive to stuff like that. I'm not talking about that, right? I'm talking about it can't be, hey, Jaden, what's the front? You know what? Other guys in the room,
yeah.
Now you're guessing, right? Don't guess. You either know or you don't know, but you can't guess, right? So
I love that. I love that last aspect there where he's talking about what's the front, understanding exactly what you're going up against, because your assignment's going to change, right? Your target point, your impact zone is going to change based off the front. We've talked about different fronts, right? We talked about over, we talked about under. We really shifted to it when we went to a 4-3 defense because now it applies more now than ever, because when you're in a 34 front, 90% of the time, if you're playing a base offense, whether it's 12 or 21, you're just going to be in that 34 jam, right? You're going to be playing a 0, couple 3s, maybe a couple 2s, which is the traditional jam. I call it, even with the 2 3s and a 0, the 3-0-3, I call it a jam as well. You got 5 guys on the line of scrimmage and the center's covered up. That's typically what you refer to as jam. And with these new looks here, or not new looks, but when you're talking over, when you're talking under, you're talking bare fronts, you're talking the calls, when you're calling out these fronts. Aaron Rodgers said it years ago. You can tell 90% of what the defense is doing just by looking at the front. If you study tape all week, you know when they're in this front, now that narrows the list down of 12 to 15 coverages down to 3, right? And you know exactly where they're going to be. So, again, I know Aaron got raked over the coals for not trusting his receivers. This is exactly what the coach is talking about. If you don't know what you're doing, how you're doing it, and why you're doing it, we don't even need you on the damn field. You're not, and I don't want to be rude and use the word casual fan, but those fans that get loud on social media, they don't even understand what the call is. And it's, well, the guy's open, just throw him the ball. That ain't how it works.
Not how it works. Yeah.
You just, and I don't know how many times people have to say it. And Kurt Warner, first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback, Mr. Underdog story. When he tells you that and your response is, well, he's just defending the quarterback, I'm sorry, we can't help you. We can't help you. There's just nothing else you can do. But I thought this was awesome in talking about trust. It's so underrated in the league, man.
That was gold, really gold. That's 2.5 minutes of gold right there. And I think what I took away from it also is when he talked about, you get a young recruit in and you sit him down right away and go, look, buddy, you're not starting. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You got to understand what we're doing here. And on the flip side, I think what it does is it builds trust in the coaches from the players' perspective as well, because you've got a coach that's not going to BS you. He's going to expect the best out of you. And if you go out and execute, there's a path to seeing the field. If you're the guy, like he said, if you know it right away, there's no hesitation. It's quick. It's fast. You can get the call out clearly and you understand what's happening on the field. You might find yourself on that field during game day, and it kind of sets that tone early with a young player. Because a lot of guys, they feel like the coaches are the enemy sometimes, or they feel like, coach is down on me. I think you kind of kill a lot of that right away. If from day one you set that tone and say, hey, you want to see the field, here's the path to do it. Get on board with the rest of this team and we'll see what happens. And I just really respect that. I think says a lot about coaching, especially at the college level.
Yeah, Drew D says, "What's a GA?" I didn't actually hear that in the video. If he said GA, he probably meant graduate assistant, I would imagine. You get a lot of that. There's a lot of coaches that were graduate assistants.
Yeah.
Is kind of how they got started.
I was going to say, I thought gap assignment maybe.
Could have been.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think he was talking about his staff, right?
It could have been. Yeah, there you go. I think that's what J. Cole said, graduate assistant as well. So that's probably what they were talking about. Yeah, I would imagine that's what it is. If he's talking about recruiting and meeting with the GA and this and that, that's the graduate assistant, which it sounds silly as, I bet that's just a pin pushing job. But there's a lot of graduate assistants that go on to be coaches. So it's definitely it's kind of like quality control, in my opinion, Tim. In the NFL, you hear someone was a quality control coach. Next thing you know, they're an OC, they're a head coach. One that comes to mind is Mike McCarthy. That was his big thing. Attention to detail, right? You got some coaches that are just all motivation, and you got others that are, really embedded in the
Dan Campbell method, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And you got others that are really embedded into the details. To me, the great coaches are the ones that are a combination of both,
I agree.
Typically, if you don't have both, you lean on the one you're strong at, and then you borrow credibility from someone else to gather the latter. Like Mike McCarthy was very, very, very detail oriented. He could draw up a scheme. You've seen it in Dallas. I mean, that dude. The fact that he does not have a job now is wild to me. Because he went down there and won 13 games and just like it was nothing, just jumped right into another team and off they go. But the motivational aspect, he doesn't have as much. Well, I always talk about, I bring it up for the Super Bowl year. He brung in a guy to kind of help with the psychological side of the game, kind of that dude he could lean on for a little motivation, things like that. And they were talking about the night before in the hotel when I think it was CJ Wilson. I could be wrong, but there was one of the young defensive linemen could play a piano. And he said they were in the hotel lobby and he started playing that piano. Next thing you know, the team kind of gathered around. They were singing a Christian hymn while he was playing that piano. And he said that team doctor, that psychiatrist, whatever the technical term is, leaned over and nudged McCarthy and said, "You just won the damn Super Bowl." That's what he said. Because you need that unity. You need that kind of motivating where everybody's bought in and you don't have a turd in the punch bowl like we were just talking about, right? And I love that coaches are starting players early like that too, because in today's NIL, I tell you, the one that talks about it the most, everybody looks at Deion like, he's just buying players. No, Deion's the opposite. Deion says, if I sit down in somebody's living room and the first thing they say is, "How much money are we talking, coach?" I'm out of here.
I'm out of there. Yep.
Yeah. That's not the guy I'm looking for. So pretty cool. Let's see what else we got in here. 2-0 for this says it's the same as any job. You need to be able to trust the people you're working with. It's so true. It's so true that, especially a job there's some danger involved, I've experienced that firsthand with different work I've done with steel and concrete work, and being on a grade beam 45 feet in the air, and you're dependent on the guy running the concrete pump that I'm hanging onto the chute illegally, by the way. Hopefully OSHA's not watching. And you're walking a 12-inch beam holding that concrete chute with a boom that's 150 foot long. And then you got the guy next to you who's communicating with the guy running the boom. You're holding on to the boom, hoping he makes the right call. He knows exactly where I'm going and what I'm doing. You got a spotter behind you ready to help grab and assist if you do lose bound. Like, everyday job, everyday work, that stuff comes into play. There's no two ways about it.
Yep.
And if with the football, it's with the game of football, it's not so much dangerous as it is. There's this much room for error, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's why 12 was constantly pissed off when people wasn't in the right place,
Because all it takes is one guy to miss an assignment. The whole play is blown up.
Yep, no doubt about it, man. Drew D says, with college players getting paid, I was thinking that provides insight into what games will be driven by money and what guys will be more team guys in the NFL. Yeah, you can look at it a multitude of ways, It's like, okay, if a player is just chasing money, the game probably doesn't mean as much to him as it does the player that's like, hey, is this the perfect spot for me to build my college careers that'll propel me into the NFL? And along the way, build those awesome friendships and team camaraderie that's going to lead to a potential championship, right? So,
yep.
Yeah, it's a great point. Great point for sure. All right, let's go to the Patreon group. Tim, you got anything you want to hit before we jump in the Patreon questions here, man? Anything at all?
I guess we should mention it. We give Bears fans a lot of crap a lot of times, but we should send our condolences to the Chicago Bears, the passing of Mama Bear.
Yeah.
That's kind of the rivalry between the Packers and the Bears is well documented. We understand it. But these two teams' histories are forever intertwined. And, we just have to take a minute and send our condolences to the Bears for sure.
The McCaskey family and everyone. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we love to look at the Bears fans are the ones that we have a hard time with, especially their toxic fans, right?
Right.
Yeah, I've had some good experience with Bears fans over the years too, don't get me wrong. But when it comes down to it, the history of the Packers and the Bears, Chicago and Green Bay, man, they leaned on each other for so many years.
Yep.
Like Papa Bear helped bail the Packers out and helped drive interest in stock drives to keep the Packers afloat. But at the same time, Papa Bear knew, man, if Green Bay's not here, we draw our best crowds when Green Bay comes to town. So you take care of each other. So yeah, man, yeah. When it comes to people passing and people that have been, whether you think that she was a pioneer or not of the game, she's someone that's important in the history of the game, in my opinion. Definitely want to send our condolences over there. And again, it's bigger than football, man. When stuff like that happens, everybody put your swords down for a second.
Yep.
Let's respect the fact that they added to the game, and it'd been real easy to just go, this doesn't mean anything to me. I'm going to sell it and move my life. I'm going to move to a beach somewhere. But she wanted to be in and around the game for so long. I think it's awesome, man. Even if she wasn't like the one like Jerry Jones pulling the strings, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. No, it's bigger than football, no doubt. All right, let's go to the Patreon here. Thank you for bringing that up, Tim. I appreciate the reminder there, man.
For sure.
Big Cheese Meat Packer over in the PTA Patreon group. If you guys want to join the Patreon group, scan the QR code in the upper right, send you to Packer Fan Total Access over at patreon.com. And we got a multitude of chats in there. We're going to be doing giveaways and stuff. I'm actually sending off 2 pieces of memorabilia today to winners, one of which we found David James. He was in Australia. So we're sending our first international package.
Wow.
As far as a giveaway. So yeah, it's pretty cool that we got listeners all the way across the globe. But yeah, if you guys, like I said, you want to join that, just scan the QR code. That'll send you to the right spot, or go to patreon.com/Packer Fan Total Access. We're going to be doing a giveaway again here real soon. Big Cheese Meat Packer says, as a family of Hokie alum, hearing from a few Virginia Tech player names on our board is very exciting. I know we've touched on Aeneas Peebles and Dorian Strong a good bit, but would love to hear a breakdown of defensive end Antoine Powell-Ryland. I know Jake Shavink sounded excited over him in one of y'all's mocks. Maybe a quick touch on running back Bashul Tutin. As well. I'm sure I butchered the hell out of that. That man seemed to carry our offense the last few years, but I know that's not a position of need. So let's look up these two players here real quick, Tim, on our board. I'll do a quick search. If you got anything, you just fire away, but I'll go ahead and start looking them up on our board here, man. So,
yeah, I'm trying to search myself here. I'm looking for, well, we know about Peebles. We've done some study on him, but the D end, Antoine Powell-Ryland, trying to find something.
I've got him right here. We got him in the 175 spot on our board. Big Cheese Meat Packer. Love the name, by the way. So in 2022, he was the 371st graded edge defender. In 23, he jumped all the way to 78. And then in 24, he dropped back to 118. The PFF Big Board had him at 200. The Consensus Big Board had him at 141. And he's not in the top 100 or top 50 of Daniel Jeremiah or the top 100 of the 33rd team. So we have him in the 175 spot there. So if we were to go to our little cheat sheet here, 175, if we were to take him somewhere around that range, Tim, that would be probably – it would be reaching a bit for the 5th round, or he may it'd be great value for that 6th-round pick at 196 is where we got Antoine Powell-Ryland, edge defender out of Virginia Tech. So there's the first one. You got anything on him now, Tim, or you good, man?
No, I don't, but I'll start studying.
This next one, I don't think we have him on our board, so we may add him. Let me just type in the last name. Nope, we got him. Okay, so he's actually in a similar spot. You know, Powell-Ryland is at 175. We've got Tutin, however you say his name, running back out of Virginia Tech. We've got him in the 180, what is this, the 185 spot, it looks like. So just 10 spots apart, essentially. He was the 18th best or highest graded running back in college football in 2022. Then he fell to 249. Then in 24, he jumped up to 144. The PFF Big Board had him at 141. The Consensus Big Board somewhat agrees. They have him at 148. So he comes into the 185 spot for us. So another guy that might potentially be a 6th-round pick, 5th to 6th-round pick, somewhere in that range, which, like he said, he understands we're not really in the market for running back, but you never know, man. You never know. And we don't know. Listen, I hope Marshawn Lloyd is good to go. I'm not going to BS anybody. That was a little concerning for me last year that there was a multitude of injuries. You know, you look, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me once, you can't fool me again, as a great president once said. I said great. I say great like this because I know some people are going to disagree. We'll move on. But, yeah, that's something that I'm looking at Marshawn Lloyd like, okay, bub, you got to prove it to me. You got to prove it to me because Matt LaFleur was very excited about Marshawn Lloyd, man. Very excited. He called him that little rocket in the backfield. He kept referring to him as that. I hope he can pull it together and stay healthy this year because I think there's a decent chance that he's going to have a pretty big role on this team. And if you see Marshawn Lloyd healthy and you see him on the field early, man, that says a lot because when you're taking Emmanuel Wilson off the field for another player, you've got to at least think he's on par with that player. You know what I mean, Tim?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's concerning. Anything hip or lower leg with a running back, man, you got to watch those that type of injury, man, long term. So hopefully he's good to go this year. Yeah,
for sure. All right, the next player that he mentions in here, Big Cheese Meat Packer, says, also would love to hear a little more about Alec Onyemanor, wide receiver out of Stanford. Emilio should know him from NCAA 25. Dude was always top portal target in career mode, but also Ryan Schlipp loves him. So curious what y'all's thoughts are there too. I almost took him with a mock that I did this morning. I took Drew D's advice and went over to Pro Football Network and did a mock draft by myself this morning just to kind of get a feel for their system. I think we can make that work on a live draft moving forward. But so Alec Onyemanor, however you say his name, wide receiver out of Stanford. He was at the Senior Bowl. He is in the 68 spot for us, Tim. So you're talking about a dude that when you look at our picks here, probably somewhere between a 2nd to a 3rd round pick. If Goody has a higher grade on him, that might be the 2nd round draft pick at wide receiver if we go that route, right? But at 22, he was injured in 22. We do not have a grade for him. So you think, okay, that worries you a little bit. Well, he stayed healthy in 23. He was the 140th graded wide receiver. At 24, he was the 160th. So on the surface, you go, don't look that good, right? PFF Big Board has him at 31. The consensus Big Board had him at 48. The 33rd team has him in the 43 spot here on their most recent one. And Daniel Jeremiah must have him outside of his top 50. So the thing that's bringing him up our board, Tim, is the PFF Big Board and the consensus Big Board. The grades are what's pulling him down a little bit. So I would be a little more hesitant on Ayumanur as I would, someone like a Jaden Higgins or someone like that who's just dominated multiple years according to PFF. What's your take on him, man? You got anything to add to that?
Yeah, he's 6'2", 210. So he meets my qualifications. Bigger body type of receiver. Yeah, I mean, the grades kind of hurt him a little bit. Also, I was looking at, he played like, what was it, 12 games in 2024? Yeah, 12 games here. Just shy of 1,000 yards, 6 tutters this year. He played at Stanford, so that's kind of tough too to gauge the talent. But I mean, they played against some pretty good schools this year, and I think it's fair to have him where he's at. And I'm not as high on him as I am on some of my other receivers, but I certainly would not at all be disappointed if he was the pick. It's not. I talk a lot about Jaden Higgins, but there's a good crop of talent here that I think will be on the board in the second round at least. And right. I think Alec is one of those guys. So we could do a lot worse at receiver.
Yeah. And he, when you look at his snaps here too, 407 out wide, he had 62 in the slot. So he's not really, I wouldn't consider him a slot receiver, although he can line up in there from time to time, which every receiver should be able to for a multitude of snaps, right?
Yep.
His best game of the year was at NC State, a 90.3. But some of the bigger games that he played in here, let's say like at Syracuse, a 66.9, at Clemson, 63.9, at Notre Dame, 64.5, Wake Forest at home, 74.4, at Cal, 71.7, and I think that's at San Jose State, a 72. So for me, I'm not as big on him. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the pick. It's just he just kind of looks meh for me. He really does. Yeah. There's too many questions, and in my opinion, there's other prospects that'll be available at the wide receiver position when he is that I would have higher. That's just my personal opinion. I could be completely wrong, but his grade versus man coverage is solid, 76.9. That's above the 3-quarter mark. His contested catch rate is median line 48.3%. His drop rate, Tim, is 8.7%. That's well below the median line. Receiving grade 74.3, and then his yards per route run is right at the median line at 1.9. So I'm not saying he's a bad player, Big Cheese Meat Packer, but I think there's several people that I would have above him that would probably be on the board at the time that we would pick him. So
like a Trey Harris or a Jalen Royals.
Yeah, there's several here. Like
Pat Bryant. Yeah.
Let me do this since you brought that up. Let me sort my board by wide receiver, and I'll tell you the receivers I've got above Alec Ayumanur, okay? I've got Tatero McMillan is number 1, Emeka Egbuka is number 2, Luther Burden's number 3, Matthew Golden's 4, Trey Harris is 5, Xavier Restrepo is 6, Jaden Higgins is 7, then Ayumanur is 8. So he's my 8th best receiver as the board sets right now. So he is above Jack Besh, who's 3 spots below. Jalen Royals is 1 spot below Jack Besh. Pat Bryant's like 3 spots below Pat Bryant. So just to put that into perspective, I'm not saying he's a bad receiver. It's just if he's on the board and Jaden Higgins is there or Trey Harris is there, I'm going with one of those guys, right? But there is a scenario there in that situation where he could be the best wide receiver on the board when we pick in that second round. There's no doubt about it. If that's the case, hey, I can't go against the pick. So, all right, appreciate that, Big Cheese Meat Packer. Last one here, Greg S. says, you might have talked about Jacob Parrish already, but he seems like a solid slot cornerback. He met with the Packers at the Senior Bowl, and every write-up says he is elite at reading routes and contesting catches. He is a great one-on-one tackler and good supporter. He was the vocal leader of the Kansas State defense. He is undersized, but he says he models his game after Ja. Very interesting there. So let me pull him up. Tim, you got anything on Jacob Parrish, cornerback here, man?
Graded out as a 74.6 in 2024, according to PFF. Looks like he played predominantly on the boundary, but just underneath our threshold for slot corner. 91 snaps in the slot. We usually look for, what do we say, 100 or more in the slot to kind of qualify.
That's close, though. That's close,
pretty close, right? So I think, he's played in the box 44 snaps. I mean, they clearly use him in blitz packages. He's had snaps on the D line. I see what you mean with the size. He's 5'10", just under 200 pounds, so a little bit smaller. But sometimes that's good with a DB. Sometimes the oversized corners can struggle at times. So I think he's certainly worth looking. Where do we have him on our board? I know he's on our board.
We got him at 145 is where we got him.
Okay.
Yeah, Jacob Parrish, he's a cornerback. We got him with the V. We listed him as versatile. So I bet he had box snaps along with those slot snaps that kicked him up into the versatile column for us. Like I said, we got the cheese logo next to his name here, which meant the Packers did meet with him at the Senior Bowl. PFF grade in 2022 amongst cornerbacks, he was 403rd. 23, he was 402nd. In 24, he jumped all the way to 176. The PFF Big Board had him at 113 at the moment. The Consensus Big Board had him at 138. And the 33rd team has him in the 81 spot. So the 33rd team grade right here is what really is kicking his grade up big time. So we'll see where Daniel Jeremiah ends up having him in the top 150 of his board. If he's closer to 50 than he is, 150, then he's going to climb up our board a little bit more. But yeah, we definitely got that versatility tag on him. So
awesome.
I'm glad we did that too, adding that versatility there. And also with the offensive lineman, we're going to go back through and try to see, okay, who are versatile offensive linemen who can play inside. Not that it matters, because the Packers will take a tackle and move them inside anyway, but it's important to have that information of who has maybe center background, that type of thing. We need to get the wrestling info too. I did some searching the other day, and I couldn't find any article on here's the offensive lineman with a wrestling background. But if you guys see anybody like that, especially in our Patreon group, in questions for the show or draft prospects would be better. In that chat, if you see anyone who has a wrestling background, fire their name off in there with the wrestling background. We'll make sure we add that to the list. Because I'm telling you, Tim, there's a direct correlation there, man, to guys who have a wrestling background that play offensive line. They go to the NFL and they just understand leverage, man. They really do.
Oh, yeah. Yep. It helps you with your hands, too. You see a lot of guys with the good hands, not just the footwork, but the good hand, fighting against those D linemen, man. I mean, it's crucial.
Yeah, no doubt, man. All right. I think that's kind of where we're at. We'll go ahead and wrap the show up there. We hit on the Patreon questions. Obviously, we hit on some stuff there at Twitter. Again, the big topic today, Sterling Sharpe making it into the Hall of Fame, just absolutely awesome, man. Absolutely awesome.
Well deserved.
Yeah. Anything else you got, Tim, before we wrap up here, man?
No, I'm just going to sit here and see if I can convince the missus to take a trip down to Canton this summer,
Hey, that'd be a good trip. I was telling Tim offline, guys, I would love to go to Canton. It's just my busiest time of the year.
Yeah.
And I'm 42 now. I'm starting to look at, okay, we're about to shift gears into the next stage of my life that I may not be doing what I'm doing much longer. So not talking about the pod, talking about running a landscaping business. So trying to get a target age like, okay, yeah, that's enough. We'll go ahead and wrap that project up and move on to the next thing. So we'll see.
You'll be ready to go when Aaron gets in. We'll plan that trip. We'll all go.
Yeah, that's going to be at least 4 years from now, possibly 5, right?
Yep.
If he plays another year, I'd be 47. Yeah, that might work. Probably make that work.
For sure.
But just the summertime is crazy for me. I'm telling you, man, I would spend a lot of time in the off season in Green Bay if it wasn't for what I'm doing. So 2-0 for this, says Clayton. You AFAM says you ain't kicking the bucket yet. I don't know, man. There's some days I wake up and go, this might be it. This might be the last day. 2-0 for this, Clayton. Joining the Space Force. Space. You ever heard of Dr. Steve Brule, Tim? John C. Riley did some videos. You can find them on YouTube.
I think I remember that.
Bro, that guy he's a nut. Dr. Steve Brule. He had one where he's talking about space. People are going, Clayton, it's not funny. We don't know what you're talking about. Go YouTube, Dr. Steve Broyle. I think it's Bruhle. If you don't like stupid comedy, you're going to hate it. But if you like Dumb and Dumber type comedy, oh my God, he'll have you in stitches. So, AFAM says, AFAM living to hundreds easy. That mustache, you better, man. They're gonna use taxidermy to preserve that mustache that AFAM's got. You know what I mean? So, all right, that's it, guys. We're out of here. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us. If you would hit that like button on the way out, and we will see you tonight for PTA Live. Full disclaimer: tomorrow there will be no shows. Okay, I'm going out of town. Got to go to Lexington. We're going to watch the Cats play a little ball. I hate basketball, but my sister absolutely loves basketball, so we surprised her with some tickets to Kentucky Wildcat game. I've already been looking at the menu. I'm going, yeah, give me the nachos. The nachos are looking good. So that's how I'm going to make this trip work.
You already called your order in? They know as soon as you get in?
Me and my oldest sis, we don't get to spend any time. We've missed out on a lot of time together over the years. She watches the show a lot. Just one of the most special people in my life. It's going to be awesome to go up there and watch a ball game with her. Who knows, man? This might get me back into basketball. You never. I'll tell you this: college basketball is a lot more tolerable.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you're going to watch hoops again, stick with the college.
Exactly. All right. Appreciate y'all's time. Hit that like on the way out. We'll see y'all tonight. PTA Live, 7 p.m. Central. Tim, thank you for your time, man.
Thank you, Clayton. See you later.
Have a great day. Stay warm out there. We'll see you.
And we go. Bye, guys.